As we all know, the road to becoming a man is a treacherous journey.
Every boy faces a long and dangerous path on his way to manhood.
The journey encompasses physical, emotional, and spiritual changes. And while there are plenty of external changes to observe, what happens on a heart level is much more important.
Between our two families, we're the fathers of 7 children, and 5 of them are boys. Whew. And I know I speak for the both of us when I say us so-called experts, neither of us were fully prepared what it meant to wrestle with the hearts of our little wild things.
How a man nurtures a boy directly affects who he will grow into as a man. There is something unique we as men have to offer our sons in guiding them on their journey toward manhood. And any father or stepfather has got to take that call seriously. The scriptures remind us that all children are a gift from God. Boys bear a unique image of our wild, playful, and imaginative Creator.
Boys are also proof that God has got a pretty good sense of humor. Boys are a different breed. Boys are often a little squirrely, unpredictable, and they're kind of hard-headed. Most of the time, they require a different approach from what it would take to parent a daughter.
Boys don't come with blueprints or instruction manuals. Like it or not, fathering a son is much more akin to growing a tree than it is to constructing a building. There is not a list of steps to take that will make sure our sons are going to turn out the way we want. Who they are meant to be is already written into their hearts. It is our responsibility as fathers to nurture it out of them.
Because of their unique design, guys, you can't tame a boy. In fact, it's dangerous when you try to. However, there is a framework that we can use as dads when it comes to nurturing our sons. One that is much more focused on his character than his performance.
This framework takes into account first who the boy is uniquely created to be, and secondly, our role as fathers. There is no such thing as a self-made man. There are self-made survivors, but no boy becomes a noble man of character on his own.
He needs the help of older men, ideally his father. Boys need us to recognize who they are, and they need our help to become what they are made to be.
This framework for fathering sons begins with understanding. We have an advantage as a father because we grew up in the skin of a boy, but it's been a while. It's been a while since we were boys, and we have to know what's happening in his development at different stages. We've identified 5 and hold these ages loosely because every boy's going to move at his own pace. But the first stage is the explorer. This is roughly boys between birth and 4. The second stage is the lover stage, boys 5 to 8. Next is the individual stage, boys 9 to 12. Fourth, the wanderer stage. This is his adolescence, 13 to 17. And then the 5th stage is the warrior stage, young men 18 to 22. And you don't need a PhD in developmental psychology, but a dad does need to become a student of his son and of his own story.
Boys need different measures of different things at different times in their lives. What a boy needs at age 5, like boundaries, doesn't go away when he's older. It's just that he might need more of something else. Like when he's 7, he needs redirection, or at 10, he needs a lot of involvement from dad. That may sound obvious to some of you guys, but one common mistake we see fathers make all the time is that they're using the wrong things at the wrong ages. They don't understand what's going on developmentally. And one thing is for certain, the older a boy gets, the more he's going to need from his father.
Understanding doesn't stop with development. A father also needs to have an awareness of his son's temperament. A dad's got to ask himself, how is my son uniquely wired? Is he athletic? Is he artistic? Is he spiritually sensitive? Is he academically astute? Is he relationally gifted? Is he introverted? Is he extroverted?
Not all boys' traits will be obvious at birth. Look, sometimes it takes a long time, maybe even years, for our sons to show us what they're made of. But when a boy does show it, we as fathers, we need to understand not just how he's wired, but what makes his unique heart come alive.
That brings us to the next part of the framework, engaging. The older a boy gets, the more complex and dynamic his needs become. His needs move from being primarily physical in that birth to 2 window to being increasingly relational, emotional, and spiritual. Now, what a boy gets or does not get from his father at any particular stage will directly affect how well he's going to transition into the next one.
The reason so many men struggle relationally, struggle professionally, and even struggle spiritually is not a lack of intelligence. It's not a lack of willpower and effort, and it's not a lack of morality. It's the effect of not having reached their own key developmental milestones, guys, of being rushed through one stage or another. And sometimes guys just simply skip through entire stages altogether. Without a dad engaged in his story with him, a boy gets stuck left wondering if he even has what it takes to be a man.
Questions like this are at the heart of every man. Do I have what it takes? Am I the real deal? Do I measure up? Am I made of the right stuff? A mistake we make as fathers is not paying close enough attention to when and how our sons are asking questions.
In each stage of his journey, a boy needs his father to engage differently. In the explorer stage, ages 2 to 4, a boy needs to feel a man's physical presence. He needs hugs, he needs cuddles, he needs kisses for long periods of time. Boys need to experience the tender side of masculinity. This can be difficult for some dads, really difficult, but it's also really important. This kind of interaction builds a sense of safety, a sense of security, and a sense of comfort. Likewise, boys also need to wrestle so they can begin to feel and test their emerging strength.
And that burns off some energy, which makes mom happy.
It sure does.
Always.
Speaking of moms, explorers need to feel his father's strength and support of his mother. How a husband treats his wife will lay a foundation of respect or disrespect that a boy will draw on later in his teens.
Let's jump into the lover stage. This is roughly 5 to 8, and I think boys are full of some of their best stuff in this moment. And it is in this stage that much of a boy's personality will emerge, and he needs his dad to identify it and explore it with him. It's important, dads, don't pigeonhole your boy as this kind of kid or just this kind of kid. As much as possible at this stage of development, a boy needs to just be able to be exposed to a wide range of experiences, both indoors and outdoors. The focus needs to be more on enjoyment than competition. Now, that doesn't mean boys can't compete. They will. Competition is a part of how he's hardwired. But before the age of 8 or 9, a boy's primary agenda should be having fun, exploring, developing, and gaining confidence. The key word here is fun, not win.
Look, this is also the age where dads can teach their son to connect with their heart. Just like explorers, lovers need physical connection with dad. Lovers also need to feel their father's emotional presence. Boys need to see and experience that emotions belong in the entire life of a man. Men who are flat emotionally are dangerous fathers, raising boys who will lack wisdom and lack courage. As boys transition from the lover, they move into what we call the individual stage. And for a dad to engage the individual well, he'll need to expand his repertoire.
Yeah. Boys at this age need to know that they are a force to be reckoned with. It is a dad's job to call out a son's strength, not just physical, athletic strengths, but also emotional, artistic, relational, and spiritual strengths.
At this stage, there's no such thing as a boy thinking too highly of himself. He needs to know that you see his strengths and that you value them. One thing dads need to look for, underline and validate at this stage, is the emotional vulnerability of a boy. For instance, look, if your son comes to you and he's got a problem with his sister, with his teacher, with his coach, even with his mom, along with helping him develop his own solutions to the problem, you got to make sure that you recognize and you affirm his willingness to be honest about his own weaknesses and his own struggles. That's going to pay off loads as he gets older.
This kind of positive reinforcement will help the two of you keep the lines of communication open in the next and likely most difficult stage, the wander. All right, the wander, 13 to 17, is really just a nice way of saying adolescence. We call this stage the wander because boys are wandering away from their parents. They're making the shift from parents toward friends as the primary influence in their lives. Now, it takes a lot of ingenuity for a dad to stay engaged in this phase.
One way to stay engaged is by supporting all of his pursuits, whether they're your interest as a man or not. You may not be into hunting or fishing, but guess what? You're going to find yourself spending all your Saturday morning sitting in a tree stand, kind of secretly hoping that a deer doesn't walk into the view of your scope. You may have hated the marching band in high school, but now you're going to be running the bake sale to raise money for new uniforms. So sports were your things, you say that? Well, guess what? Every night on Thursday, you're going to be working the ticket booth at the school play. You got the idea? It's not about you, it's about him.
Engaging your wander by enthusiastically supporting his interest is great, but it can be a fine line. Dads, you gotta be careful not to care more about any activity or interest in your son's life than your son does for himself. Because don't we all know some dad whose identity is tied up in his son's pursuits. Our interest needs to be with our sons, not their accomplishments and recognition. And also, guys, one thing we can hope for our sons in this particular time is for a mentor to emerge and help guide them as they wander. Help him find trustworthy men, coaches, youth pastors, teachers, and encourage these relationships. Since even the best relationship between a dad and a son can be strained in this stage, mentors can help to guide sons toward the last stage of development as a boy, which is the warrior stage.
The warrior stage is so much fun, especially if a dad has shown up in the struggle well in the previous 4 stages. This is the place where you get to really see him step into his own. Relationship in this stage is more about quality than quantity. Boys in the warrior stage are full of promise, they're full of purpose, they're full of innocence and insight. They're trying to launch themselves into a dangerous world. He's ready to fight, but largely he's been untested. This is where he begins to take his lumps in life.
And as a father, we can't go to battle for him, though some of us will try. As dads, we need to make the transition to consultant and comrade. And he's trying to figure out what it means for him to be a man. Our job as dads is to find ways to fit ourselves into his life. He still needs your presence in his life, but he also needs the freedom to test himself. And guys, if this sounds difficult, it's because it is.
It's hard.
Parenting a son in transition is a lot like learning to line dance. There's a lot of stepping in and stepping out, and it is all about timing.
And while understanding and engagement are essential to boys at all 5 stages, they're pointless without the next piece of the puzzle. Validation. A boy needs to know that his father approves of who he is more than what he does. Look, winning games, scoring grades, getting the girl can be nice, but if a boy is trying to earn his father's love and respect through accomplishment, it's worse than being a lost boy. He's a cursed boy.
To validate him well means that we need to do 3 things. We need to see him, we need to name him, and we need to draw him out. So let's talk about that. Seeing him. Seeing him means having an appreciation for who he is. It means maintaining a curiosity about who he is and casting a vision for who he will become. Naming him. Naming him has to do with the authority that you as a dad have been given to speak truth into his life, truth about his character, about him, to him, and for him. And then the final aspect of validation is drawing him out. And this has to do with him being challenged, invited, coaxed, and directed toward authenticity, integrity, and intimacy. This type of validation, dads, makes way for the final piece of the framework, initiating and celebrating.
I love this part. The heart of a boy craves rituals. It craves ceremonies. It craves rites of passages. Look, guys, in our rapidly changing culture, boys are wrestling with questions of identity, questions of morality and belonging. In a world that's rooted in relativism like never before, boys have little truth in which they can anchor their hearts. Our culture has largely deemed it unnecessary to initiate young men. And if fathers don't create rites of passage for their boys, boys will end up on their own. If we don't mark their passage into the fellowship of manhood, they'll create their own experiences that make them feel like men, and that's seldomly good for them.
Without initiation, boys are groping for direction. Initiation is fundamental to the heart of a boy. It introduces them to manhood. A boy who has been initiated is connected to something bigger than himself, and he grows up knowing that life has meaning. For initiation to be valuable, it's got to be costly. For a boy who's been tested by the furnace of life and made it through, life seems different. He finds himself connected to something greater than himself. In the process of initiation, the shell of his boyhood, it dies, and what emerges is the heart of a man connected to God. Initiation at its core, it's both painful and spiritual. It's more about revealing God's character than it is about revealing the boy's character.
Along with initiation comes celebration, and boys need to be celebrated. And considering the kind of experience you're setting up for a boy, here's one thing to keep in mind. Make certain to keep your son's interest at the center of the celebration. You don't want to put so much emphasis on the theme for the event itself that you miss who he is and what he loves. Look, make sure the nature of the celebration matches the nature of the boy.
This framework of understanding, engaging, validating, and initiating, guys, it can help us. Being a father is hard, costly, and rewarding work. and a dad cannot give what he does not have. While a mother's challenge in parenting a boy is his otherness, our challenge is our son's sameness. Sons have the power to expose the chinks in a father's masculinity, forcing me to face myself. Through a son, a dad reconnects with his own experience of being a boy and a son himself. In order for a father to encourage his son toward a heroic journey through boyhood, a dad must first be present in his own story.
And this is not a one-time thing, guys. Too many men think they've done all their manhood work. They've gone to the retreat. They've read the book. They've watched the video. They've memorized the slogan. They've even gotten a t-shirt. Becoming a man after God's own heart is an ongoing process, not a series of events. If a father doesn't keep showing up in his own life, he can't show up with his son. For a dad to do this well, he must unpack the bags of his own childhood. To the degree a dad hasn't answered the questions of his own story, he'll be tempted to put that burden on the shoulders of his son. And we know too many guys who've needed their sons to take care of daddy's ego.
A dad has to engage his own heart and his own story. Dads, we've got to come to terms with the truth of who we are as men, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how these things play themselves out in the life of our sons. Every father needs a deep connection to the God who created him, a bold vision for his own life, and a humbling participation greater than himself.
No matter how you slice it, a father's relationship with his son goes a long way toward defining a boy's masculinity and even shaping our world. There's no weightier title a man can bear than father. Not CEO, not president, not coach, not even husband. Look, guys, as fathers, we have the power in us to bless, and we have the power to curse. God has written a unique story in each of our sons. And our sons need us to live fully with our hearts surrendered to God so that we can help our sons live the story God has written for them.
There was a time when I was a kid when I wanted to kill myself. I wanted my dad in my life. I had heard stories about my dad. I grew up in the same neighborhood that my dad grew up in. So he was just already larger than life to me. And to have a male figure who's, a manly man and strong and fast and can fight and attractive and just all those things as a young man, to know that that's who my father was, I wanted to know him.
I had been a drug dealer on and off in a way that no one knew, because I had two lives, and I lived that really good. And it became a part of my personality that when I had kids, I didn't stop to think about any of that. It was just about that identity of being a drug dealer, because that's what my dad did.
The first time I saw my dad, I was 6 years old. I remember he was at my grandmother's house, and I went over there to see him. I walked in the house, and he and a friend were sitting at the table watching a football game. And I remember him being a huge guy. I remember him being really strong. I could just see it in his presence. And I don't know what it is about being a kid. It made me excited. It made me feel powerful to see my dad as this, strong guy. And he embraced me, and I embraced him. And then he kind of just went back to watching the game. And I remember wanting to engage him more and just kind of sitting there wondering, what do I do? I wanted to be safe, I wanted somebody to protect and provide and take care of me. And I think only my dad could do that.
I had this desire to do different and be a father and be there. And something came on in me to want that, but I couldn't, because I was a fugitive and my lifestyle was still the same. And I knew someday that I would be going to prison, but I still wanted that. And I just didn't know how, and I felt like a failure. Now I'm in prison now with a sentence of 22 years. I'm still the same drug dealer who just don't know.
While he was in prison, he reached out to me, and kind of let me know he was there and he loved me and this, that, and the other. Once I was 13, I probably went out there once a year, either Christmas or summertime, to go and visit him. And that was always a highlight to me. He had gotten saved in prison. And I think that's when he wanted to go deep with me, once he got saved. He really wanted to build a relationship with me, and he wanted to be a father. We went the deepest when I came to the Lord. Once I accepted Christ, then golly, that one, we had something in common that was the center of our lives, that united us in an entirely different way. We began to develop a friendship in a lot of ways. It's mind-blowing, honestly. And I'm so excited for what God is doing in our lives. I mean, let me be honest, there's still a ton of growth for us. There's still lots of room for us to grow. I still have feelings of I need to keep this together, or is my dad going to explode, or be angry, or this, that, and the other. But we've come a long way. We've come a long, long way. Man, your kids just want your love. They don't want you to come and have all the answers, or be a drill sergeant, or try to be the father now. They just want you to love them and listen to them. And if you have an opportunity to share something and they're willing to let you do that, do it. But more than anything, they just want you to be there, to encourage them, to love them. They're just looking for you.
We hope today's session has encouraged you, equipped you, and challenged you. Raising sons well isn't easy, but it's worth it. What an amazing opportunity we have to help our sons grow into authentic manhood. We want to close our session today with a prayer of a father for a son. It's the prayer that General Douglas MacArthur prayed for his son Arthur. Here's what he prayed. Build me a son, O Lord, who will be strong enough to know when he's weak, brave enough to face himself when he's afraid, one who will be proud and unbending, and honest defeat, and humble and gentle in victory. Build me a son whose wishbone will not be where his backbone should be, a son who will know thee, and that to know himself is the foundation stone of knowledge. Lead him, I pray, not in the path of ease and comfort, but under the stress and spur of difficulties and challenge. Here, let him learn to stand up in the storm. Here, let him learn compassion for those who fail. Build me a son whose heart will be clean, whose goal will be high, a son who will master himself before he seeks to master other men, one who will learn to laugh, yet never forget how to weep, one who will reach into the future, yet never forget the past. And after all these things are his, add, I pray, enough of a sense of humor so that he may always be serious, yet never take himself too seriously. Give him humility so that he may always remember the simplicity of greatness, the open mind of true wisdom, the meekness of true strength. Then I, his father, will dare to whisper, I have not lived in vain.
Please remember to invite a friend or a family member to join our next episode. Contact us for more information as well as the details on becoming a partner of this program.